Oops, I'm afraid there are more than 21 decks on my desk right now, so I hope I managed to select just 21 for those 21 tarot questions. Hi, I'm Kathu. This is one of my videos in English. I do share mainly in French though, so yeah, I'm a French speaker. Please forgive me for my English, but I'm very happy to be taking part to this tag by Lisa Papes, which is called today 21 Tarot Questions. And it's all about decks, and I have to admit I had to take a break a couple of weeks ago. I had to take a break from watching any videos with tarot decks, tarot reviews, and this kind of tags. I was fed up with watching them and fed up with making them. I had reached a point where it was just too much. Didn't make sense to me anymore, but I'm back. The first question is, what is the deck they'll have to pry out of your cold dead hands? Ooh, it's an easy one because it's a rare deck, well, totally out of print, really hard to find, and I'm very happy I could get it while it was still available. It was a gift from a friend. Everything about this deck is wonderful. It is queer. It is, I mean, I love the colors. Touch of golden, and well, this is not one of my favorite cards, by the way. Golden, black, and kind of reds, burgundy kind of color. The accents of white and gray, I mean, and the representation and everything that goes into creating something new with the cards. The guidebook is really amazing as well, very innovative. When the deck was first published, well, the only time it was published back in 2016 or 2017. I mean, it's very precious. I had people tell me, oh, I can buy it from your collection if you want to, if you ever want to resell it. And I'm like, never. I mean, we do have a bound. It's not a deck that I use all year round. I have noticed and I have accepted that is a deck that I'm going to use mainly during the autumn month. Now we have, what's your guilty pleasure deck? Well, first of all, I try to never feel guilty for my pleasures. But I would say the Kawaii Tarot, as you can see, I'm currently modifying it. Why? I don't know. It was just perfect as it was, but I don't know, I couldn't help myself. I wanted to edge it, and I was not really satisfied with what I was going with, and I thought, oh, maybe I need to take the edges off. And no, it doesn't bring anything to the deck. I don't think it's gonna destroy it, but it was just fine as it was. But anyway, I'm in the middle of it, so it just doesn't look like it's gonna look like in the end. Why is it my guilty pleasure deck? First of all, just because it's so kawaii, obviously. It's cute and adorable, and it doesn't really fit my collection or my aesthetic, or it's not something that I'm actively trying to bring to my collection, right? But also there's this thing of, you know, the kind of treats and candies and everything delicious that you can see on it. I really like. I'm a very sugary person. I wish I wasn't, but I am. And yeah, maybe that's why, because I do love candies as well. So look at this. It's really cute, and maybe I don't feel like it's a grown-up deck, and I should maybe not have that sort of deck in my collection. But yeah, actually it makes sense. I bought it as a self-care deck, for the moments when I don't feel really good and I need something that's really gonna be really soft and nice. And yeah, I mean, the colors and the messages and the kind of yeah, funny childlike, I don't know, everything is just cool for me. And see the food, the cupcakes. Yeah, guilty pleasure it is. I actually like it. I don't use it all the time, but whenever I'm having like a very hard PMS, or like I'm really depressed or something, it's gonna be the deck that I go to. The third question is, what's a deck you wish existed? I'm having a hard time to answer that question because there are so much decks coming every day with more creativity and people bringing more things to the tarot community with our representations. So I don't have a dream deck. As I was preparing, I thought of something maybe with the kind of 80s aesthetic and something like with vintage outfits and something like kind of femme and queer and badass. And by the way, it leads me to the next question. What deck would you give to a new reader? Well, first of all, I'm not someone who thinks you need a Rider-Waite-Smith inspired deck to learn tarot. I think you can learn tarot with anything. I learned tarot with a non-conventional deck. It went just fine. I don't think I'm a bad reader because of that. I don't think I had a hard time because of that. I think it's easy to look up the classical Waite-Smith on the internet and get inspired by the illustrations if you want to have this kind of more conventional deck. But I don't think we need to hold it as such a standard. Now, okay, for this question, because I know that many people feel more comfortable maybe potentially learning with such a deck, I did choose two. Oh yes, I'm gonna cheat, by the way. I did choose two. I have two decks here that are more clonish, Rider-Waite-Smith clonish. Maybe not this one, maybe it's because that's the reason why it would be the one I suggest first. It's the This Might Hurt Tarot. I like it because it's very inspired by the RWS, but there's something really modern and cool and easy to relate to in the images. It's not only like mundane thing, like everyday life kind of scene, but you have that and you have things that are a bit more, I don't know, maybe imaginary or archetypal in the majors. So it's kind of a nice mix, and it's not a perfect deck, but in terms of representativity, diversity, it does a decent job, pretty good job. It's now easily available in mass market editions, in French as well, so it would be one that I would say, if you like this aesthetic, because of course it's the first thing to suggest to a beginner. It's not like, oh, I have a deck for you. It's more like, what do you like? Tell me what kind of decks you feel attracted to, and I'm going to tell you if it's the right one to start with or something like that. I would never just say, oh, take this one, it's going to be fine for you. So now for people who want to go a bit further regarding representation and who want something that's very clownish, very RWS inspired, for me sometimes it's a bit flat because I don't like to read clones of the RWS, but let's admit that the aesthetic is really bringing something to this deck. It's the Queer Tarot. I guess it's a good starting point if you really want to start with something that looks very much like the RWS, but with diversity or inclusivity or whatever you want to call it. I'm not going into details here because I already have some videos on the subject. So anyway, the Queer Tarot would be a nice beginner for people who feel like a more classical RWS inspired deck is something nice to start with. Now, I would say to people, if you don't care to start with such a deck, if you don't care that it's so inspired by the RWS, if you just can, like anybody else, look up on the internet and find pictures of the RWS, but you wanna, just have something that's sweet and gentle and tender and that's gonna help you learn tarot as well, I would probably tell people to go towards something like the Gentle Tarot. This is my pocket edition, and by the way, my wife makes those little pouches and bags for me. If you want to check it out, I'm gonna share her account in the description box. So the gentle tarot, because it is so gentle, and sometimes for some people it's nice to have a gentle deck as we start tarot, because it can be very impressive. A lot of people can get overwhelmed by some of the imagery, so I would suggest the gentle tarot as well. But if people ask me what do I need to start with, I would be more inclined to have a conversation with them and have a few suggestions and insist that the first thing to start with is a deck that resonates with them, and then the rest, I mean, we can always adjust. There are some decks that I would say are more out of any systems, work with their own systems, that I wouldn't recommend. But I would say that frankly to the people, and then they can still do whatever feels right for them. Question 5. What deck do you want to get along with, but it just never clicked? Well, I don't have it here because I try not to keep the decks that I don't get along with, but it would be the Fat Fox Tarot. As someone who has long been, or was for a long time at least, a fat activist, as someone who wrote a lot and shared a lot about the problems with fat representation in tarot decks, the lack thereof, but also the problematic fat representation in tarot decks, according to me. Of course, it was important to see that there was at last a deck with fat representation and various fat representations. So of course I wanted to love it, and I did want to support it, so that's why I bought it. Now, the fact that it is a collective deck, I don't really like collective decks, apart from the first one that you saw here, the slow hauler. So it didn't work for me. The kind of pictures, that the kind of art, let's say, that was on the cards, it wasn't my stuff. It was maybe too Gen Z or something. There was the inspirations just didn't work for me. Some of the pictures were so wonderful, so beautiful, I loved them, but some of the artwork was just like, I really don't like it, and it's okay, but it would definitely not be a deck that I would have been able to work with. And it's sad. I mean, I really wanted to love it, but if I was not gonna use it, I had to let it go, and I did. Question 6, what deck do you only keep for the art? Okay, right. I have several propositions for that. Okay, I took the guidebooks out of my shelves because I think it's part of the story. Here we have the Tarot, and you can see the art much better in the book, by the way. So I'm keeping it for the artwork, but also all the reflection and the work that went into the artwork. So it's a whole, you know. Now, it's hard to work with a deck with so many layers and so much knowledge. Okay, this is a very modified version. It's a deck about female women, feminist figure throughout history, her story maybe, and it's a collage deck. It's really beautiful. There's a lot to work with, but maybe there's too much to work with, because I can't work with it without having the background story of every people here, which I don't know, even though I did study history and I did focus mainly on gender and women history. I do keep it obviously for this wonderful artwork, and also for everything about it that I can find here in the guidebook, but can't really use it. There's too much. It's not really intuitive, because I'm a Gemini Sun. Tomorrow is my birthday, not tomorrow and you're gonna see the video, but tomorrow as I'm filming, and I need to get all the information that I can, and in this case it's keeping me from reading the deck. In the same kind of idea, I have the Daughters of the Moon. This is the Dutch version, so the guidebook is in Dutch, which is not a problem for me, because although I don't speak Dutch very well, I do understand it. I'm from Belgium. I'm not really fond of the artwork per se, although I do love the fact that it's it's a collective work, it's a feminist work. For me, it has this kind of thing of grassroots movements and, you know, self-help groups and all of these things. It feels very old school. That's why I had to have it in my collection, because although it didn't necessarily age well, as like most decks from this kind of era, like the 80s, it's like very heavily cisgendered. Sometimes we can get close to cultural appropriation, which is not something that I want in the decks that I use, but there's something historical about it. There's something about this artwork that I'm not sure I could say I love the artwork, or I find it, you know, pleasing for the eye or something like that. I just like it for the historical dimension. History of feminism is one of the things I'm really interested in. Am I really interested in that? I used to, you know, I worked in gender studies for a while, a long time actually. So yeah, this is, yeah. And I know it's a tarot tag, but I just had to be bringing an oracle deck or two with the questions. It's kind of the same thing with the herbiary, illustrated herbiary here. I mean, the pictures are just amazing. I love the artwork. I love the little like folkloric and historical and medicinal reflection on every plant. Now, I don't really use it because I have other tarot and oracle decks to work with plants and I think work better for me. Also, this edition, I know there are several versions of this deck, but this one precisely, it's not already amazing when it comes to cardstock and stuff. So yeah, just yes. And I love the book. I keep it with my more like herbalist kind of books, and yeah. Very local as well compared to other books. I can find a lot of things that we can see here in Western Europe. What deck did you buy because everyone else did? Now, let's not lie here. There are many decks that we buy because we are influenced by the community. We see a nice review and we want it, even though if we take a second to think about it, we might know that it's not for us. No, I'm getting better with that than I used to. But sometimes I do notice that I still, especially with mass market decks, make a mistake. And this might be about it because it was a thing and I thought it would work for me, even though I should have known that this kind of digital artwork is not what works for me. It's the Tarot of the Divine. Now, because I didn't click, and I'm not necessarily bad when it comes to deck modifications, but I can be bad. And this is one of these cases that I was like, oh, I'm going to distress the edges. Okay, it looks okay. But then I was like, oh, I'm going to use my inks to do more. And so I did. I don't think it looks bad, but I think it's a deck, because I don't use it, I could have I could have given it to someone, or, you know, sell it or something, and now I can't. I don't think I can because it's such heavily modified. I mean, it's a beautiful deck. I love the fact that it's about myth and stories and legends and folklores from all over the world. Even though I know that I can't read this kind of artwork because I find it hard to dive into it. I think it's quite pretty actually, but you know, there's not much in the guidebook about each card. If you want to have more, you have to buy another book, and I don't like that. I don't like the fact that you should buy several things in order to be able to use a deck properly. And yeah, I like it. But I did buy it because of everything I saw about it and because I like the concept. But if I took a bit more time to think about it, I wouldn't have. So definitely, voila. I had another idea here. It's the Modern Witch Tarot. I rehomed it, but I kept the box because I use it for some of my pens here. Okay, the Modern Witch. I don't think it's so much because everybody had it, but also it's because at that time, a couple of years ago, there weren't so many feminist and contemporary decks that were sort of RWS clones, and I thought that at that time, because there were not as many as there are now, because I'm working on queer and feminist tarot decks and I want to share as much as I can on the topic on my channel and my blog and everything, I thought it was a must for me. Even though, and it's the same as it is, I know it's the same as the other one, I know that the digital artwork here, it's just flat for me, it doesn't resonate. I know myself, I wouldn't make the same mistake now. The fact that everybody had it isn't the only sole reason why I had it, but it's part of the reason, I have to say. So 8, what deck is over your head or just baffles you? And I still have it for study purpose, because I thought it was still an important addition to my collection. It is the Thoth deck. Tarot, I'm wondering, I think it's a French edition. Look, I have a problem with my ribbon because I never use it. Okay. Oh yeah, it's a French edition because it was the least expensive I could find, and I thought, yeah, why not? I mean, I'm a French speaker, so there are several reasons. I like it. I like to have it for study purpose because of the visible addition of the Hermetic Golden Dawn, Order of the Golden Dawn, astrological associations here. I enjoy the keywords and the visibility here. I enjoy the work, the way that the codes work in the Thoth system, but I mean, I don't really like the use of the Kabbalah because we know that there's a history with Crowley and others of being anti-Semitic, and yet using the Kabbalah in their own Western way, that I think is kind of annoying. I don't like the occultist dimension of it. I don't like the Crowley character and his sexism and everything. And also there's a kind of aesthetic, like first part of the century, the 20th century in Lady Frida Harris artwork that just, it doesn't really work for me. I'm getting used to it. I'm not as repulsed by it as I used to. I know it's the same for everybody. You either hate or adore the Thoth deck. There really is no in between, and for me it's just like, what's wrong with this deck? But I like to have it for studies. I will never read with it. I think it's impossible, but I kind of have the same thing with the Marseille actually, so I'm very RWS team kind of person, although I don't like the original either. Well, I have many problems with it as well, let's say. So I guess I think we need to allow tarot to grow and to be a reflection of our times and of our minority, our margins as well. And I guess those old decks don't do the work, and I want decks to feel more like decks that I can relate to. And the occult tradition is something interesting for study purpose, but also problematic for many reasons, including, you know, white supremacy. So, okay, next question. What deck surprised you? I have a few on this list as well. Yeah, I keep on cheating because that's the way that I am. And where's the other one? Here. Okay. First of all, maybe this one. It's the Italian edition of a deck that's called Tarot Cards for Modern Goddesses. It's a mass market deck. I love the idea it's really not my type of artwork, but I wanted to give it a try, and I made my butch buy it for me for Christmas. So yeah, I have some problems with especially the majors. Like here, for example, we have a kind of a mix of a goddess with a historical or contemporary figure. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's just like a mishmash of things, a bit new agey, a bit culturally insensitive, I would say. And here, for example, we have Coco Chanel, I mean, on temperance. And the way they write about it in the guidebook, it's in Italian, so I'm not going to say that I speak very well Italian, but it's like, oh, she's an example of grace and, you know, balance and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, she's a collaborationist. She was very much a Nazi. She was homophobic, and, well, there's nothing right with Coco Chanel, right? I mean, some people still think that she made a contribution to the fashion history. I would say it's kind of a myth. She was just a very good marketing person, communication person, but she was not. She didn't revolutionize fashion. She was just able to take, you know, she was an opportunistic person and basically a Nazi. I mean, do we need someone who is a Nazi in a temperance card? I don't think so. Contrary to the oral tarot that I have here, where when they have problematic people like that, they explain why it's here, and they explain why also, you know, humanity is not always only good people, and nobody is only a good person, and, you know, but here is just like, don't tell me that she represents grace and balance or things like that. She's just a Nazi, okay? But so I have to kind of forget the associations that were chosen for the major. I have to totally erase it from my mind. It feels like a bit, yeah, I don't know. and it reads really well. It's a very good deck for everyday life. It's really nice. Yeah, I have very good results with it. I like to read with it. I like the aesthetic. It's a bit girly. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche. I love it. I mean, pink is my favorite color. Come on, it's really nice. Yeah, I mean, Oprah is, you know, Weight Watchers, lobbying, big capitalist person. I have to get over whoever they chose for the major arcana. I don't know, they have problems here, but it did surprise me, because if I decide not to use the guidebook and ignore what goddesses and character were chosen as an inspiration for the majors, it just reads well. It's nice. It's not my aesthetic. It makes me think of the Good Karma Tarot in another way. I mean, it's supposed to be more about women, I guess. It's okay for me. I mean, I'm a lesbian. I could live in a world without men, I guess. It's not, they're not like fundamental in my everyday life, so I can easily read the deck with mostly women. But yeah, it's not very, I don't know, it's not supposed to work, but it does. Same goes for the White Newman Tarot here. I'm not going in another long rant about the lack of body diversity and body type diversity in tarot decks, but of course it's a problem for me. And as you can see with the White Newman, it's particularly true for women's bodies, which is another problem. I feel like I'm really tired today, and it was okay for me to be doing a video yesterday morning with my morning coffee, but today I feel like my English is going to be even crappier than it was today. Hey, you know what? Just let's go with a cute French accent, right? Let's not mind my terrible mistakes. Okay, I do not find the French accent to be cute, to be sure, but look, she has the body of a Kardashian. Really not for me, not the kind of tarot decks that I would expect. We all only have like people in positions of power, like the queen or king, that can be a bit more, have a bit more variety in the body types, but otherwise it's a very slender deck. And the cat is in the little box, so I need to stop now. Let's say I have many reasons to have reserves about this deck, but when Liminal 11 asked me what deck I wanted to review next, I thought, oh, let's try it, because there's a vibe that I like, despite also what I feel like is the over-sexualized female and especially lesbian body in certain cards, like the Lovers card. And yeah, it's a surprise, because the vibe, like the profound vibe of this deck, something more like numinous, because it's called the White Numen, and going with the animals and everything, it overcomes for me the pity that it is in terms of lack of body diversity. I simply can't relate. It does feel like a deck with heavily filtered people from the Instagram and influencers with a lot of Botox and everything. It's not a dig for people using Botox, obviously. It's just like, it does feel like there's an aesthetic there that can be damaging to people with other bodies, you know. It seems to be I don't know, there's ça va, Sawin? There's a kind of, she likes it when I speak English, as you must know. Sawin, she's sitting just next to the phone, so you might hear her breathing in the back of the video. It's gonna sound a bit creepy, but she's actually really, really cute. Aren't you, my darling? Oh, squishy cat. Okay, moving on. Let's not get distracted now. So the question is, what deck doesn't really work for you, but you keep it because it's a collectible? I wouldn't say that I'm keeping tarot decks because they are collectibles, but, you know, it kind of fits the bill here. I'm trying to fit my decks into the question. So here we have the Spolia Tarot. Oh, it's a big one. There are many reasons why I don't vibe with it, and there are many reasons why I'm keeping it, and it's not just, it's a collectible, and it's, you know, first of all, constant quality, it's just stock, there's nothing, there's no nothing, so it's pretty bad. Well, the cat loves it. Do you want it? So if we take off the extra zodiacal minchiate elemental cards, this is still what we have for the deck. It's pretty big, and because there's nothing in the card, I mean, I'm gonna break it. That's a bad point about this deck. So I modified it, which is nicer, I think, but it's one of the reasons why I can't really get rid of it. You know, it's very, very highly personalized. I took the ages off, but also because it wasn't so easy to remember which card was which. Put the numbers on, here is the world. And also I wanted to go, because we have the zodiacal association here, I wanted to make sure to insist on the planets, that's the Three of Wands, associated with the major arcana cards, like a major arcana card, like the moon here with the High Priestess. So it's another reason why I have to keep it, is because I don't think people don't buy my modified decks. I see that some influencers, YouTubers here, they can rehome their modified decks, and people will be just like, oh, let's buy it, but I'm not that talented, so nobody wants to buy my decks. I like this deck, but there's also something. The name Spolia is a reference to when different cultural, architectural, and art traditions and crafts traditions would meet in big cities, Italian cities especially, like Rome or Venice, throughout the centuries, and they would you know, with a mixture of knowledge coming from different parts of the globe, they would come up with a special kind of style, but also spolia, and I don't know if there's such a word in English, but when we say spolier, it really means like you're taking things from someone, and there's a colonial conquest idea between the spoliage, and yeah, I can only, on some cards, there's a cultural element, cultural appropriation element I'm not sure about in this deck. It's not that, I'm not sure. I really am not. So it's kind of hard to use, but yeah, first of all, it can hardly fit in my hand. So, you know, there are many reasons why the connection doesn't happen with this deck. However, it's out of print, and I'm kind of keeping it because I'm happy to be able to have in my collection a deck that's out of print, and that's very special. It's a kind of collage that I really like. It doesn't look like as empty as I feel like the current digital collage decks look like. So that's still something that I really like about it, but if it wasn't out of print, and you know, maybe I wouldn't be working so hard on keeping it. So voila for this one. Other collectible decks that I'm not using but I'm still keeping include this blue box historical vintage Rider-Waite-Smith. I don't use the Waite-Smith deck, so there's no need for me to have a vintage version with the very bright yellows. It's not my favorite one, although, well, I can see why people like this version better than, like, I do prefer the Centennial edition. I have the Centennial in a box, the little one in a tin, because it just fits my uses for the Rider-Waite-Smith, which is tarot study and reference. Sorry. But I found it in a second-hand bookshop a couple of years ago, many years ago, maybe 5 or something, and I didn't know that it was a rare edition. I do think it's the last one that was co-published with Rider, as you can see on the card. Well, anyway, I looked it up on the internet, and it's quite valuable. It's not terribly valuable, but it's quite valuable. It's a collectible for sure. And I bought it for like maybe 5 or 6 euros, and I'm pretty happy that it's worth probably at least 10 times that. I would be willing to sell it if anyone says, oh, I really need it, Kathu, can you sell it to me for like 100 euros? But I don't think anybody's going to do that. So in the meantime, I'm keeping this really beautiful collectible deck, although I do not use it. But now that I have it in my mind, I kind of like the cardstock quality. I like there's something really kind of 1971. It's when US Games bought the rights for the Rider-Smith, right? So I think it's an edition from 76 or 77 or something. There's a way to check it out on the internet, but I'm not always doing it like that. Oh yeah, I kind of love the quality. It's a bit worn out there. Anyway, definitely because it's a collectible and not because I'm using it. Although right now it's kind of giving me, there's something going on when I'm having it in my hands. Same, because I like to go to flea markets and other car boot sales. I have vintage Lenormand. I don't read Lenormand. I know it's a tarot tag, but I can speak about Lenormand. This is a Dondor from the end of the 19th century, and I find it really cute compared to other Lenormand. There's something kind of, I don't know, I like the look. I like the illustrations. It's really cool. I like the little poetry in French. There's something so cute about it. And I bought it for 50 cents on the flea market. Again, this time it must be at least 100 times less than what it's actually worth. But as of now, I'm not planning on selling it because because I'm just keeping it, but I'm not planning on using it either. I don't really like the predictive aspect of the Lenormand. It's too traditional for me. Okay, it doesn't, the edges are quite rough, so it's hard to put into the little bag that my butch made for it, with vintage fabric, obviously. And then I have Grand Lenormand, which is also very old and potentially from the end of the 20th century. So woohoo, because it's a blue box edition with an edition just like that. Oh, there's a reason why I can't use it either. It's really, really old. I mean, I'm not planning to read Grand Lenormand just because, and also because, you know, when you see the little scenes here, apart from the mythological and zodiacal references, there are some elements of anti-Semitism, especially if you read it with a book, and of course it's misogynistic. Like a lot of cultural production of its time, it's giving us, you know, the vibe of, oh, I'm selling the bourgeois ideal, family ideal and stuff, and, you know, being very classist towards poorer people, working class people. You can see it on some of the little things here. I'm not seeing it right now, but there are some things that are really not okay, so not using it. This one costs me a lot, but I thought, you know, it's a historical object and I wanna have it, I wanna keep it, and maybe sell it when the times become unbearable for me. It's a Grimaud edition, so yeah, it's a fairly rare one, I think. Quite fairly, but I'm never gonna use it. Oh, dust. I'm not gonna be able to sell something if I just show you the how it's taking the dust on my shelves. Anyway, we are moving on with the next question, which is, what is your favorite gilded deck? I'm gonna have to go with the Rainbow Tarot because it's very pretty. The gilding is rainbow, of course. Why wouldn't it be? And at first I struggled with the deck. I thought it was cute. I didn't know how to use it. I thought it was too close to the RWS and the Marseille for me to be able to use it. I'm not catching the rainbow right now, but believe me, there's a beautiful rainbow effect here if I manage to catch the light as I should. Anyway, I struggled with it. I like my decks to be a little more creative in the representations, like less inspired by the RWS, but actually because it's such a creative deck in terms of the use of color and people on it and the outfits and everything, I grew so very fond of it. As of today, I would say it's in my top 3 of my favorite decks, and decks I would not part with and that I do reach for regularly. So it's a funny story, but right now it's one of my favorite decks, and it's one of my only 5 decks that is gilded, and it's rainbow gilding, so what's not to love? Okay. Which deck do you love but hate the cardstock? So it's a good thing I have the indie version of this deck, so that I can complain about the cardstock version on the mass market, but I don't care because I have the indie version, which is here. It's a Fifth Spirit Tarot. Look at me struggling to open each of my bag. It's the morning, and please do bear in mind that I have EDS. So it's a connective tissue disorder, and it's a chronic illness with many consequences in my life. But one of them is that I have a very bad proprioception, so it's very hard for me to manage the perception of my body in space and the space within my body as well. So voilà. Because I have my phone here to film and little space here, it's very hard for me to do things normally. Don't worry, or normally, I mean, like someone who is able-bodied, and there's nothing normal about it. But anyway, it's okay. The decks are still cool. It's just because my hands are not doing the work that they should. Don't worry. That's a very, very, very perfect linen edition of the Fifth Spirit Tarot in the self-published edition, the original one. Look at that, what a beauty of a deck, and what a beauty of a cardstock. Now, on the mass market edition, the colors are a bit brighter, there's more, well, there are some improvements, some things that one could argue are improvements or not, depending on your tastes. But it's a Hay House deck. Oh, I hate Hay House and their cardstock. How is it possible to sell tarot decks with such a horrible cardstock? So sadly, because I really I'm quite in love with the colors of this version of the deck, the mass market version. If it was only for the colors, I would consider using this one instead of the linen one, but no, it doesn't work, it's terrible, it's not holding as it should. Look at this. And it's too big, it's too heavy. I like to take my decks with me everywhere, so they need to be light enough to be okay in my bag. And also, oh, look at that mess. And so you know that I can shuffle them easily in the park or during my walks, which is not the case with this version. So I do hate this cardstock, and it would be very, very sad if I didn't have the original edition, because it's one of my favorite decks. What deck gives you the willies? I had to look up this expression that I didn't know, but well, I learned something. Obviously, if there was such a deck, I wouldn't have it in my collection, and I can't think of one, because if there's something that's like, oh, what's going on this deck? Well, I'm not going to buy it, I'm not going to have it in my collection, and I'm trying to forget about it. You know, if there's a video about such a deck or something, I'm just going to be like, pass. I'm going further in the video. Now, there's a deck in the house that belongs, well, in the flats, that belongs to my booch, that is kind of fitting for this question, so I'm going to go grab it. Tarot Cats. It's a Fournier deck. The Tarot Cats deck is in the other cat bag, and there it is. I mean, it's not speaking to me. It's creepy. I guess that I can understand why she likes the surreal, shadowy aspect of this deck, but it's not for me. I do mostly find it creepy and not cute at all, so there we go. Not working. So it would be this one. What's your favorite deck for shadow work? I don't do shadow work because it's a Jungian concept that I cannot really understand or agree with. I mean, but I guess I'm gonna show decks that I use for introspective reason and working on shitty stuff, things that I'm just working with. And picked the Outgrow Yourself Oracle and Tarot deck, not because I could use any deck for this kind of work, to be honest. So there isn't really one that comes to mind as, oh, it must be this one, but I like this one for the little sentences that we have here that can be really pushing us very far. Even something like welcome everything for the Ace of Wands can be really triggering when it comes to, you know, yeah, being afraid of welcoming everything and risking everything, and, you know, like speak free and true can also be something that relates to our quote-unquote shadow. Expose your true self here with the Queen of Wands, swords here, sorry. We have the trust your tools for the magician, and some of them can really like kick your ass. You're a full sun plant. Some of them are like really encouraging, but in a way that sometimes are like, how the hell am I gonna do that, you know? But sometimes there's also questions or sort of questions that can be very, I don't know, because of the oracle aspect of it, like here with the Princess of Cups, what is keeping you caged. These oracle phrases can get you really far, I guess. And in terms of journaling and working on yourself, risk everything to gain everything, be brave, count your blessings. Can you accept a new beginning? What you allow will continue. Express yourself without limitation. Grow anything. What you stay focused on will grow. So I guess it would be this one. Also, there's something very interesting with having always the same kind of characters. It can also, I don't know, in terms of depth, work or path working or something, it can be very, very strong. I don't know what language I'm speaking anymore, but anyway, we have also a new deck in my collection. It's a Tarot of the Holy Spectrum, the Infinity Edition here. I would say that it would be a really cool tarot deck for this kind of work, because also it's works with the Soul Tarot methods, Soul Tarot vision of Lindsay Mack that I do love and that I do follow. Some of her courses, I like what she does, and to me, it's like, look at that Hierophant here. There's something very shadow work potentially with this deck, but you know, I bought it for my birthday. I didn't have a lot of time to work with it yet, so we'll see about that. What deck do you love in theory but not in practice? Would be the Many Queens Tarot. Ooh, it's a very, very, very modified version that I have here. It's a normal size, and I was very, very ambitious with cutting not the borders, but because the size made it very difficult for me to work with it, I did modify the size and add a lot of coloring. I love it, by the way. It's really cute. I like this deck, as weird as it can be on some cards. I had some great readings with it, but I never reached for it. I mean, it's queer. There's a lot of representation, body diversity, and everything that I can wish for in a deck. But it's not that I hate it in practice. It's just that it doesn't really work as much as I would like in practice, or not on the longer run. I had some really cool readings with it, but I don't use it very often, and I don't know. It's also kind of, even though I changed the size of it, it's still not a format that I really like to have in my hands. So many reasons, I guess. I'm just watching at my modification, and I'm kind of really proud of me, because I think the weirdish, creative, queer, punkish aspect of this deck, punkish, is enhanced by what I try to do. Well, not very successfully on every card, obviously, but yeah, it was a nice experience. And I guess some people here, I'm just looking at what I'm doing with big eyes and being like judgmental, but hey, they are in my collection and I'm doing whatever the fuck I want with them. 16. What deck would you never use to read for someone else? Never say never. Every time I've said that before in past videos, I have changed my mind in the meantime. But for now, it's a very personal deck, and I have no clue how I could read it for anybody else than me. This is a Hollow Valley Tarot. Why? Because I don't know, it feels very personal, and I don't feel like all the little symbols on the cards I can use for anybody but myself. I like to use it with the guidebook as well, and also the zine with the correspondences, like explaining what's what on the card, like what plant, what crystal and everything. So it's not... It can be a deck that I read really intuitively, but I like to work with the guidebook and the correspondences as well, so I don't see myself using it for somebody else. And also, yeah, I kind of decided about a year ago or so, oh, this is going to be a personal deck, and I'm gonna work with it consistently as a personal deck. And yeah, I'm keeping to my decision. It's I'm getting quite emotive to see it here. Not planning to use it for anybody else, but never is a strong word when it comes to tarot practice. But because the way that I see it, every time I said never about anything in my tarot practice, I ended up doing the thing in the following months. So we'll see about that. What deck would you never use for yourself? Okay, here we go. I have this one here and this one here. Never is a strong word. I do use it for myself, use them for myself every now and then. But there are decks that work better. Here, the This My Tarot. For others, I feel like I can rely on them when I read for other people. Another very pretty gilded deck, by the way, the This My Tarot. It's pretty, it's well done. I really love this deck, but it's not really a deck for myself. And sometimes you need something very inspired by the Waite-Smith system, but also very modern to read for other people. And this one does that just fine. It's a perfect deck to read for other people. Just not my cup of tea, to be honest. Not what really works for me. Not what I'm looking for in a reading. Maybe a bit too conventional. Maybe not quirky enough. I don't know. It's just perfect to read for others and not for yourself. And same for the New Tarot. It's one of the first editions. It's really crappy. I see now that people can buy something that's more matte, and I have this glossy edition I don't really like. Okay, New Tarot. I'm not so much into the style of the artist. It's not my thing. I don't adore it, but I like this deck. And for some people, for some readings, I have to reach for it because it's really interesting. I feel like it's a very neurodivergent deck. It's a very queer deck. It's a very nerdy deck as well. It's just not working for me, but still keeping it because it's nice for other people. And because I don't use it for myself, I wouldn't just swap this one for a more recent version. I don't want to buy it. But yeah, I'm keeping it to read for other people. Gosh, I'm tired. Moving on. What deck could you not bring yourself to buy? It's a deck that I love, that I would love to have in my collection, but I decided not to buy just because I know, because of the kind of artwork, very digital, very RWSE, that I would not use it. And although I would very much like to have it in my collection, I know that I don't want another deck that I'm not going to be able to use just because RWS clone and digital artwork. It's the Black Femme Tarot. It's so beautiful. So many fat black bodies that we so rarely see on decks. Such beautiful black and fat representation. I love this deck, really very much love it. And I have to hold myself back because, yeah, why would I have a deck that's I'm not going to use? I've tried before, like I told you about, for example, the Fat Fox Tarot. I had to buy it to support the a cause that's very important for me, not just a cause, but, you know, fat liberation. I mean, I've been involved in that for more than a decade now, so I guess, I mean, it's really, really important to me. But, yeah, just, I didn't use it in the end, and I don't want to make the same mistake, although I do love the Black Femme Tarot, and yeah, too bad, but impossible. Next question, 19. What's your favorite pip deck? That's a difficult question because I don't use like Tarot de Marseille, like scholarly, like kind of pip decks in a restrictive sense. So I don't really know what kind of decks I could say are pipish in my collection because it's very subjective as a notion. So it would be hard for me to pick a favorite because I'm not quite sure what to say. I would say the Ophidia Rosa Tarot would be one of the contenders here, but I don't have it here. I'm keeping it at my parents' place in the countryside. I'm not using it here in Brussels, so I cannot show you. I would say the Antiques Anatomy Tarot. I find it pipish. I mean, seriously, it's not very illustrated in, yeah, it's pipish, right? It is. Is it one of my favorite? I don't know. I hardly ever use it. I would say I use the Ophidia Rosa Tarot more than this one. So maybe it doesn't really, no, it's not one of my favorite. I like it. I like the illustrations, but I don't use the deck. So I would say then the Ophidia Rosa Tarot. Another one I'm not sure about because is it pipish or is it not? Because then, you know, the Wild Unknown would be as well, for example. So maybe the Wild Unknown would be my favorite, but I don't consider it to be a pip deck. And so I'm not sure I can consider the Spacious Tarot to be a pip deck either. So, oh, it is, with the expansion pack in it, it's a bit much. It's not pipish. I mean, there's a lot of intention in well, it's not pipish. then my pick is the Ophidia Rosa Tarot. Sorry for showing you things that are actually not pip decks. What deck slaps you with the truth? It has to be one of the decks that I use mainly for ancestral work, especially with my queer ancestors. Is the Thea's Tarot. Every time being very direct, very strong, very like speaks the language of ancestors. So it's very to the point and very strong and very everything. Okay, so it would be this one. I'm trying to finish now, so let me just go to the last question. It's a deck that I don't have because the question is, was the deck that got away? It was hard for me to come up with an answer, but eventually I'm gonna have to say the Bruegel Tarot. You know, it's a Flemish painter of, gosh, I don't know what century. I'm so sorry. I would say it's quite early compared to the other Flemish masters, right? It's before most of them. Yeah, absolutely. But then I would have to say 14th century, 15th. There are two Bruegels, right? Gosh, I'm just being a terrible Belgian person here. It's not a deck that I know that I wouldn't use it if I had it in my collection. It's kind of like the Flemish Tarot, the Van den Boer Tarot. I know that I wouldn't be using it, but because of my Flemish origins, and part of at least, and you know, because it represents the local countryside and cities as they used to be in the Middle Ages, and I don't know, these scenes, I would like to have them in my collection. I don't think that I would be doing ancestral work with them, but there's something there. Well, sadly, it's out of print, and I remember like maybe 6 or 7 years ago, very, very quickly after I started learning tarot, so maybe it was even 7 years ago, I saw it in the museum shop here in the city center, the Beaux-Arts, Fine Arts Museum. And I was like, well, no, I can't afford it. Maybe it was only like 20 or 25 euros, like any mass market deck, because it was a mass market deck. But I didn't see the point, you know, back then to have it in my collection. I wasn't a tarot nerd in any way. I was trying to learn. I didn't want a big collection or anything, So I just didn't give it much thought and just was like, no, I don't think I need that, you know. But now that it is out of print, and not just because it is out of print, but I'm just like, I should have taken it. It would have a place in my collection. And it's like the Flemish Tarot as well. It's out of print. You can buy it on like makingcards.com or things like that. You know, there are some people who would print it small batches, but it's very expensive for that. I would not use, so I need to find it on the flea market for a very little amount, and I don't know when it's gonna happen. I hope so. The Vandenborg Tarot, it's Marseille, like very old school tarot, and there's Bacchus for the Hierophants. There are so many elements there that I feel like I would love to have, but I wouldn't use it. I know I wouldn't, but so maybe Bruegel is more the one that I'm gonna mention here. How do you say Bruegel, Bruegel? I don't know how to say it in French, nor in Flemish, nor in English, so I'm gonna have to write it down somewhere in the video so you can make up your own mind. Bruegel. I think in French we say Bruegel. I don't know, in Belgian French, because French people, they like to pronounce the name of the Flemish masters in a way that's totally not the way we pronounce it in French-speaking Belgium, and absolutely not in Dutch either. So anyway, let's not go to the rabbit hole for something that doesn't interest any of you, I'm sure. It was my extensive answer to the tag 21 tarot questions, and way more than 21 decks for me, because that's the way that I am. Okay, thanks for sticking up with me. I know my English is not good at all. I got tired. I have a weird accent. I'm adding S's some places, or H's, or I don't know what I'm doing. Honestly, it's very hard to keep up with foreign languages when you have a chronic illness. I have to say my mind doesn't work the way it used to, and I'm quite appalled by that, but I'm still doing my best to every now and then come up with a video in English. I hope you can forgive me for my English. Bye bye, see you soon, les gros bidous.